all of our social media feeds, and they all come in at different times. So when they all go live, I will inform everyone officially, including yourself, Isaac, that we are live. And they're all live. We are live today with the AHDB on a dedicated broadcast about risk management for the agricultural sectors in partnership, as I say, with the AHDB. And we've titled it, How Can We Plan in a Crisis? Isaac, can you say hello to everyone, please?
Hi, everyone. Good evening.
So we're now live on LinkedIn, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, and we're live on Twitter. And also we will get the recording of this and put it on the podcast for you all to also hear as you're driving in your tractor or your car or your truck or wherever you may be in the UK or internationally. So Isaac, let's get into this. So farmers and growers are normally exposed to a wide range of risks arising from weather variability, natural hazards, and pests and diseases. Agriculture and fresh produce production relies heavily on the natural resource base and climate conditions. But what we've all experienced in the last 12 months is totally unprecedented. Feed, fertilizer, fuel, labor costs have all risen dramatically, squeezing margins from profit into loss. With all sectors forced to rein in inputs, this will lead to potentially reduced yields and production. Left unchecked, there could be double-digit cuts in output across all sectors of the UK food production and globally as well. These output cuts could bite as early as this autumn, with wide-scale shortages and an even greater likelihood of this occurring in 2023. How this will affect the 2022 harvest and what the knock-on for next year will be hard to gauge. We're going live with the AHDB and a number of their key experts that they brought in for this discussion, for this very insightful broadcast, as to see whether we can find solutions for all of us to take forward. So our key aim for this is to create direct guidance to the sectors as to how these risks can be potentially mitigated. Isaac, before we get going on that, just for those that aren't fully aware as to the workings of the AHDB, could you give us a bit of a brief on the AHDB, please?
Thanks, Max. Yes, I work for AHDB, like you said. We are a levy-funded organisation working on behalf of farmers. And we've actually just recently asked levy payers to vote on how we spend their levy. The results are in, and you'll be hearing from us in the next few weeks on how we will focus going forward as a result of that vote. But the kind of programs that we deliver is very wide-ranging. For instance, we do research, both applied and horizon scanning. We drive a lot of genetic work, both in animals, beef, sheep, and dairy, but also plants. We do knowledge exchange to help get that R&D taken up on farm. But we also help farmers choose the best system for their farm through the uptake of best practice on our network of strategic and monitor farms. We do things like looking at consumer trends, and we challenge misinformation. We also run consumer campaigns like the We Eat Balanced campaign. We work with schools and teachers to inform tomorrow's consumers. We analyze a lot of data, both locally and internationally, and look at how market trends and international events will affect the UK farmers and try and help them make more informed decisions. The area that I lead on is something called AgriLeader, and we base our delivery around three key areas: leading self, so making sure you're in the best shape to lead your business; leading people, making sure that everyone working in your business and for you know exactly what you want to try and achieve through your business and are managed in a way that deliver the best results for your farm. And then finally, leading business, which is what tonight is all about, reminding people of some of the options that's out there and helping them to make some informed decisions that will best fit their situation.
That's brilliant. That's fantastic. And just I need to positively endorse one element about the AHDB. I've been very lucky to be at the cereals event in Duxford in Cambridge for the last couple of days filming. And the theatres there, the AHDB theatres, have been packed out all day with some really key innovative discussions, everything from politics through to data and where our data is going. And we'll speak to your colleague David, who's the Economics and Analysis Director for Market Intelligence, the AHDB, to get his view on it. But yeah, I need to applaud the AHDB because the presence at cereals was very, very significant over the last couple of days.
Excellent. Great to hear.
Okay, so what we're going to do is our little agenda is that we're going to bring in our experts. We're just going to get them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to go for it in the respect of we've already discussed in our green room a number of questions that we're keen to present to get our experts, to get their view from them as to how we can potentially create solutions on the back of this. So can everyone turn on their videos? And just to say, we've got the fantastic Rupert, Divisional Director at License, who is dialed in on phone. So he's going to be, we won't be able to see Rupert, but we're going to hear him loud and clear through the landline. So no particular order. Phil, can we go with you, please? Who are you and who are you representing?
Philip Kinch. I'm a dairy and arable farmer. We have a family farm, owned, contract farming and tenanted. 3,500 acres, 360 dairy cows. I was an AHDB strategic dairy for autumn block calving. Got a team of 8 plus some family help. Also a director of Orion Farm Group, which is a buying group looking after 400 plus farms across the UK and helping them trying to buy their inputs as competitively as they can.
Excellent. And Phil, I have to ask you, how's the farm looking? Here we are at the beginning of June. Are you happy with the way things are shaping up on the arable side for harvest?
So one of our main challenges is flooding. We're on the Thames Valley, and on the whole, things are looking pretty good. The rain has come just in time for quite a few crops. Certainly, the maize was started to struggle. It wasn't getting out the ground very well, but now it's all away. So, no, I'm broadly confident. I probably wouldn't say that to my landlord at the moment with prices where they are, or else he'll start having thoughts of his own.
Excellent, Phil. Well done. Oliver, over to you, please. Who are you and who are you representing?
Thanks, Max. Good evening, everybody. My name's Oliver McIntyre. I work for Barclays Agriculture. My job is National Strategy Director, so very much the agricultural input to Barclays Agriculture. I do a lot of events like this, but also sort of in the background, a lot of interpretation of the change we're seeing and the volatility we're seeing in the market, and generally trying to interpret the challenges UK agriculture has from time to time, not least the present times. My background is I was brought up on a small family farm in Lancashire, went to Ag College, managed some farms for a while, about 10 years, then was a consultant for 6 years, farm business consultant, and joined the bank in 2006 to lend money. They realised I was far too dangerous lending money, so they gave me this job 10 years ago. So yeah, it's interesting, it's challenging, and it's great fun. I get to meet some great people and do some great things.
Excellent. There we have everyone. An honest banker, Oliver, representing Barclays, fantastic bank. Where I am in the Eastern Counties, we know that the majority of farmers are all banking with Oliver and his colleagues. Luke, over to you, please. Who are you and who are you representing?
Good evening. I'm Luke Patterson. I'm a 4th generation farmer on the Norfolk Broads. The last 6 years, I've spent most of my time diversifying the farm, mostly into tourism, which is Dylan Hall Retreats. But before that, I diversified into grain brokerage just over 11 years ago, my 12th year of Patterson Ag, where I broker independently grain, seed and fertiliser.
So that it's going to be fascinating having your input, Luke, because you're obviously seeing it from both sides. You're, I'm going to say, worldly wise in the respect of farming, but also the grain brokerage element and also the asset finance side of it. Would that be correct?
I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, it's been good having the experience in the trade I've got to help the farming business.
Excellent. Well done. And David, who are you and who are you representing? You've been the busiest man I've seen over the last couple of days at Cereals.
Good evening, Max. Good evening. Thank you. No, Cereals was good, and it was great to be there and great to engage with so many levy payers and stakeholders. But I am David Eudall. I'm the Economics and Analysis Director at AHDB. I have the pleasure of working with Isaac on a day-to-day basis. my team are producing market stats, the prices, the analysis and insights, which is explaining how prices are being formed, what's driving prices, and allowing levy payers and farmers and processors, as well as stakeholders and governments, to just understand what's driving markets and make better informed business decisions. And I guess I'm interested in this risk management thing. So I've got a previous life, I've done grain trading and I've worked in exchange rate markets as well. So I approach risk management from both a corporate sense, but also a farmer sense as well.
Excellent. And David, let's use you as the proverbial litmus paper. What was your view of the general feeling of everyone that you engaged with at Cereals over the last couple of days, please?
So it's a mixed view. It's a mixed view. I mean, the one thing that's been on everyone's lips that I've spoken to has been fertilizer. That's the main thing that's come up in terms of high fertilizer prices, the impact that it's going to have on margins, and then the decisions that need to be made. And I think that's like the key aspect of risk management, really, when we're talking about how to manage risk within a business. It's a great example of where we are now. It's a risk, but it's also an opportunity. And for arable farmers at the moment, the key thing is managing their risk to fix that opportunity of high costs, but also high prices and the margin that it brings. Those conversations and thinking about things over a longer time frame, not just a decision for today, but your cash flow and your budgets for 3 to 5 years as the subsidy structure changes. That's been the main conversation, the main discussion we've been trying to build with our stakeholders at Cereals over the last couple of days.
Excellent. And again, another reason why we need to endorse and also continue to support the AHDB with the caliber of individuals that we have with them in the respect of Isaac and David. And Rupert, over to you, just to explain to everyone dialed in. Rupert's on a landline. It won't affect people on the podcast because they can't see any of us. But for those dialing in, you won't be able to see Rupert. But Rupert, over to you, please. Who are you and who are you representing?
Hi there. Good evening. Great to be part of this. I farm up in Northumberland. I started farming, second generation farmer from 1990. Then in late 1990s, I sort of formed 3 businesses together as a machinery company. We sort of farmed 3,500 acres, and I was doing the crop cultivations and the crop care side. Then sort of early 2000s, I went to licensed insurance brokers. Still farming, then came a bit busy, so I actually got a contract farmer in to farm on my behalf. And now going around full circle, I've decided to go organic. So I've taken the farm back in hand again, and I'm now converting to organic.
Excellent. And
so I'm having to learn how to farm. I'm having to learn how to farm for the first time in 30 years. I'm really having to learn how to farm.
And is the organics going well? Is it a journey that you would recommend to other farmers?
It's by gosh, it's testing me, and because I'm not there yet. I'm in the first year, having to put in fencing, water, and trying to get back to just a sustainable farming system. Now, I've got no idea and absolutely no gear, but I'm finding it really interesting, and it is, as I say, it is challenging me every step of the way. But it's a fun journey.
Excellent. So you're excited to wake up in the morning to go down that journey of organic farming?
Well, as somebody said to me the other day, he said it either works or it doesn't. When you do something, it either works or it doesn't. So you don't get a second chance until the conditions come right again. I think that what I'm really learning is that I'm having to treat each individual field on an individual basis, brilliant, as opposed to being prophylactic in the way that we do things.
Excellent. Rupert, I'd love to have another conversation with you another time about that. Isaac, what a great panel that you've garnered for us. Over to you, sir.
Excellent. Really looking forward to it. I guess my first question would be, at what point does a business actually become big enough that it require risk management? So if I come to maybe the 3 actual farmers on the panel, Phil, Luke, and Rupert first. So in that order, what's your thoughts on that?
Right, I think that, I mean,
is that me first or Phil first?
We're going to go for Phil. Rupert, if you stand down, sir, we'll call you in when everyone. We're going to have this lovely satellite delay. So just bear with us as we work it all out. Rupert, we'll come to you. We're going to go to Phil first. Phil, please.
I don't actually think there's a threshold at which you need to cross. I think every farm business needs to have risk management in the day-to-day sort of management structure. I think a lot of people realise quite how much risk management they do in their daily management and daily planning and thought processes. I think we underestimate ourselves as farmers in our how many skills we've got in that regard, to be honest. So I don't think there's a threshold. I think we need to try and get past that idea of thinking, oh, I'm not at that level, I don't need to think about that yet. I don't think that's the case.
Luke?
Yeah, I feel that it's always the black swan event, isn't it? I think, like Phil said, there's a lot we just do automatically and we don't realise it. But it's things like if your assurance was taken away and no produce can leave your farm, how are you going to manage that? And so I think, we can look at all our contracts, our energy contracts, electricity, forward buy and sell where we can to mitigate some of this. But it's actually it's the things we don't always see in front of us that we probably need to spend a bit of office time thinking about.
Rupert.
Well, look, we're into greater uncertainty, and I think the thing about risk management, and I agree, we don't always. I think we do it quite naturally, actually, in a lot of things we do. But it helps you to sort of channel resource, doesn't it? And also be, pretty proactive in what you do. And the thing about risk and risk management is there are positive risks, aren't there? And there are negative risks. The former being opportunities and the other being threats. And it's the ability really to exploit those situations as they arise and set the agenda. And why wouldn't you want to try and set the agenda? And whether it's buying fuel ahead or inputs ahead, is it right for you on the day, having made the the budget decision that you have? And then it's being happy with that decision you've made.
Excellent. Isaac.
With many farmers buying certain feed forwards, and do you think the biggest impact of rising input costs won't be seen until next year, or how could farmers start managing that now?
So shall we throw it over to the bankers of the world just to get their view on that? Because Oliver, in all seriousness, you're touching so many customers. That sounds all wrong, but you know what I mean in the respect of you're a bit like a bee. You're going and gathering pollen, gathering information from so many different sources. So you'll have a great view on this, Oliver.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Thanks, Isaac. I think just, we've got a 25% market share across UK agriculture. As you've already highlighted, Max, we have some real stronghold areas like East Anglia. So, our team are out there, 80 plus dedicated agricultural managers are out there talking to farmers day in, day out. I think it sort of links into the first question. I think for me, I would agree with some of the other speakers. Farmers, agriculture in general, actually does an awful lot of risk management that we probably don't put under the heading of risk management. So looking at sort of volatility, buying feed forward, buying fertilizer forward, selling crop forward, it's really important that all these things, and I think it was Luke who said it's office time. It's sitting down and going, right, what are the risks to this business? And it's not just identifying the risks of, if you look back at a sort of SWOT analysis, it's not just about those threats that come from outside the business. It's looking at the weaknesses within the business. Is one particular area of the business reliant on one particular person to operate it, one particular person's skill sets? It is about assessing that risk and having some sort of, I don't know, I suppose in the world of banking, we'd call it business disruption sort of policies. What happens if, and having that plan in place. Because, as a bank, as I've said, we've got about 25% market share. That's an awful lot of debt we put out of the door to UK agriculture. And when we're looking at a lending proposition, it is actually the management and the character and the ability of the people wanting to borrow money that we're really assessing. Because having done 5-6 years as a farm business consultant, cash flows are great. They're a great management tool, but you can make them sort of say what you want. So it is about that sort of interactive management of the farming business that, Luke spoke about, and Phil for that matter.
Yeah. David, we've got to go to yourself as the Economics and Analysis Director and Market Intelligence at AHDB. What are you seeing in this context, please?
Well, so I think there's a couple of different ways that we need to look at it. First of all, we've got to and kind of agreeing with what Oliver was saying there about the amount of risk management going on. And sometimes we can easily scare people because we're using terms like risk management, and it's there's a big psychological driver here that we need to think about as well. That when you're looking at risk, it isn't all about what's happening in the business; it's about the people involved as well. So every farmer has to understand their own risk appetite and their own risk profile to then start making the best decisions. And there are going to be some people who are, we're asking farmers to be vets, chemists, biologists. Now we're saying they need to be economists, and with everything else going on, there's a huge amount of pressure on farmers' time and understanding your own appetite to risk, your own profile of risk. If this discussion is making you have sleepless nights, that's something that needs to be mitigated and needs to be done about. And then in terms of like you were saying earlier about the cost of fur and feed, that's an anxiety driver, isn't it? That's very concerning for people at the moment. And so when you can put measures in place that are making decisions that are, like you say, buying fertilizer forward, selling grain forward, understanding that there is a margin there and fixing a profit for the future, that's a key risk that can be taken out of your business that then alleviates that psychological side of the anxiety and the concern about it. So there's a huge topic that we can go into there in terms of psychology.
Yeah.
Phil, sorry, can I come in there, Max? Phil, and from your buying group sides, and you head up on that. What do you see in there, and what's the strategy going forward?
And the difficulty for buying groups is that you're not necessarily acting as giving advice as such as being facilitator of trades. And the job of buying group, as I see it, so some people get hung up on saying, "Oh, well, we're going to compare prices across buying groups," and they're not always the cheapest or whatever. And I think people are missing the point slightly, that actually what's important about buying groups is security and consistency and confidence of supply. And that's where we've been focusing a lot of our efforts to make sure that, like with ag chems, with problems with some of the supply chain on the ag chems, it's making sure that we've actually got supply coming through and things like that. And it's that sort of risk that that we're being able to help support on. Obviously, the cost, the buying power of a buying group is great, but I think a lot of these big companies they almost saw the buying groups as threats over the last sort of 10 years, and have tried to limit just how much of an impact they can have. But it's that. Also, it's the fact that you can just make one phone call and you know that someone else is going to ring round a dozen suppliers and find you the cheapest or most consistent product. So,
yeah. Rupert, do you have a view, please?
The only view I would say is that we're going to have to treat fields on an even more individual basis. So that's getting out there and making sure that if we don't need to put on.
We just lost Rupert, of course. Luke, just over to you again. You've got this really interesting background with your day business of on the trading perspective and asset finance, and also your farming side. You must be seeing this, or you must be having a lot of people coming to you asking for advice as to how they should plan and structure, not only for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years out. What are you seeing, please?
I'm seeing quite buoyant arable farmers at the moment that have fertilised their crops with relatively cheap fertiliser in today's marketplace, and given the range we've just had, actually, crops are showing a bit of promise, so things are looking quite good. And actually, business last month was pretty brisk. A lot of people have covered themselves on a reasonable amount of their fertiliser, in all fairness, and sold grain on the back of it. And I think that is one of the simplest hedges that farmers can take, is actually they're buying their inputs, they can sell some grain out the side, and at the moment, there's a margin in it, assuming an average yield.
Yeah, and we have to ask Luke, because he'll be in the know. Are you seeing significantly different buying and selling patterns from farmers currently?
I don't feel farmers have radically changed the way they buy and sell. I think the higher prices have changed a few people's tactics. There's people who perhaps haven't sold forward in the past. Actually, when wheat was up at 330 for November X farmer, actually I probably should be selling some of this. So yeah, there's subtle changes, but I wouldn't say there's radical changes in the industry on how people buy and sell.
That's interesting. I thought it would be. Rupert, back to yourself. Sorry, we cut you off in your prime.
Well, I think what I was really saying, and I think it's happening anyway, I think this whole sustainability and your interpretation of sustainability and what progressiveness is, I think that the conventional world is moving closer to the organic world, and I think that there will be a real concentration on soil health going forward. So that's how I think that these rising input costs actually are going to be managed or mitigated to some extent.
Yeah, well said. And Isaac, if it's okay to mention, we were talking to a lot of the experts in the green room earlier about the next event coming up, which is Groundswell. And there's a number of people who are actually highly surprised that they're going to Groundswell, but they feel they need to because of everything that the likes of Rupert and Luke just said. This whole change in this philosophy, and perhaps actually going to the likes of Groundswell might give some of the answers. Isaac, over to you, please.
Excellent, Max. Just asking from the panel, what are the blockages that historically stopped arable farmers, say, from hedging sales and livestock farmers from feed inputs, and what can maybe be done to remove those blockages? Who shall we go for first? Luke, so you got your hand up.
I have indeed. I think relationships was one of the words I wrote down thinking about this, and that is relationships within your business, and it's your family. And if you make a decision and it goes well, it's probably a joint idea. If it goes badly, it was definitely your idea. So relationships within the business, but also relationships with people who you buy and sell with. You know, if you've got a good, strong relationship with who you sell to, you can talk to them about various options rather than just picking up the phone and perhaps selling something. If you change your view on it, can you buy it back? Can you add a premium? Are there other things you can do? And I think, you know, a good relationship will facilitate that. And so I was thinking relationships with who you sell to. I mean, you could talk about a bit about education, but you know, you talk about historical blockages. Well, I think the industry is moving quite quickly to change the way it did things, and so the wheel is turning on this subject.
I interviewed Anna Hill of BBC Radio 4 Farming Today fame yesterday, and she actually pulled me up when I was describing farmers because she wanted to use the word businessman, that farmers are turning more and more into businessmen. Oliver, are you seeing this with your background in the sector consultancy and Barclays? Are you seeing that farmers are getting more professional, and likewise the people that are supplying the farmers? Are you seeing everyone getting raising the bar, and even more so in these interesting times, Oliver?
Yeah, thanks, Max. I wouldn't disagree with that as a statement, Max. I think certainly, you know, I've been involved in sort of consultancy and banking for over 20 years, and I feel the world has moved forward. Those progressive farmers realise the value of having a strategic plan, having a cash flow forecast in place, but also a little bit that Luke was talking about then, actually surrounding yourself with people you trust, people's advice that you like to listen to. And then, you know, as Luke said, you make your own decision. And if it goes well, it was your decision. If it goes badly, you've got someone else you can blame as well. But yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say one of the big kickers in the dairy sector, for example, was when we had that milk price drop. Was that 2014, 2015? You know, I would say probably 1 in 10, 1 in 20, 1 in 10, 1 in 8 dairy farmers were doing budgets and forecasts then. I think that figure's probably over half now these days. And I think that in these volatile times, like a cash flow is not going to help your business through struggling times. What it is going to do is going to tell you what you need to get through. You know, if fertilizer price goes up, it's knowing what that means for your cash flow, how much working capital you're going to need, whether it's coming from cash or coming from a bank is almost irrelevant. You need to know you've got enough cash to get through to the next grain check. And I think that correlation between high input costs, but actually you can nail a really good grain price at the minute, you know, means as Luke said, you know, the arable sector at the moment is in a good place. There might be some pressure points next year, but at the moment with those high farm gate prices, you know, picking up that correlation between input and output costs and matching that sort of cash flow of 8-12 months to get to it is on the forefront of a lot of farmers' minds, probably more so than it was 20 years ago, Max.
Oliver, thank you, because what I'm really learning from yourself is you mentioned this word cash flow a number of times, and we need to lean on your expertise on that side. Rupert, what are the blockages?
Max, if I can come in just on that, because that's a really good point. You can have your trading accounts, your taxation accounts, whether it's sole trader, partnership, limited company. Profit on the bottom line, it's important, but it's the movement of cash in a business and the timing of cash payments. And I think more and more farmers are beginning to understand that. As bankers, we'll look at profit, but we do all sorts of permutations and calculations in order to understand what's happening with cash in that business.
Right. Okay. Good. This is so insightful. So we're learning from Luke about relationships. We're learning from Oliver about that banking element, having that information at your fingertips. Rupert, if we lose you again, just keep dialing in because it's working really well. Rupert, what are the blockages that you're seeing, please? And what might be the solutions around them?
I think that the main blockages are hope. You know, and farmers are massive risk takers, aren't they? You know, and they don't really realise, relative to other businesses, just how much risk they take on. And I think, other than you know, those who adopt a process where they sell, you know, maybe 20% pre-harvest, they're reluctant to do that until they see what is in the barn. And you know, is the price today going to get better? So I'm going to say they are optimists that they're going to get a better price. I'm not sure that that's the basis to make a decision, but I think that is, you know, would explain why, you know, to a certain extent, why, you know, not more is sold ahead at fairly high prices at times.
Thank you. Phil, are farmers massive risk takers in your view?
Well, I was just write down, what other business makes their produce with no certainty over what they're going to be selling for at the end of the day, because we're so far ahead. We're putting cows in calf and bringing young stock through, and it's 1,000 days until that cow starts, or that progeny starts milking, and with wheat, 18 months probably before we're selling it. And no other business works that far ahead or builds that far ahead with no firm commitment on what they're going to get for it. And so there's a huge amount of trust. A lot of it is just, well, I did it last year, so I'll just do it again. And almost, I don't know if that's like a farmer's disease. It's like, well, it's what we know and whatever. I mean, certainly going back to on the previous point slightly, going back to my father's generation, I can say this because there's no chance of him downloading the podcast. I mean, their education was very much this is how you need to feed a cow and milk a cow, and this is how you grow a wheat plant and look after it. And now the future generations coming through are multifaceted business-minded individuals who have got to have so many other skills. Probably the least important is how you feed and milk a cow, and all the other bits that come with it. Obviously, there are a few people of my father's age that have probably got those skills already, but I'd say that few and far between.
Well done, Phil. Thank you, David. What's fascinating segment of the conversation? What are you seeing? Picking out the threads of our various other experts.
I think a key thing here underneath it all comes back to education, doesn't it? And we need to empower farmers to have the tools and to have the knowledge available to make these confident decisions. And across all of this, it just comes back to the time and the knowledge. And if a farmer has the time and has the knowledge, they will probably make the right decision, but they just need to make sure that they have the tools and they have the resources. And I think it's coming back to a point that Luke said, there is no one person that will give you the answer. You need to have those relationships across everything. You need to have your relationships with your input providers to ensure you're buying your inputs correctly and understand. Then you speak to your bank, and you're going to speak to AHDB and other people that provide any kind of market information. Soak it all in. I see what we do as AHDB and what other people provide. We're a time resource. We have the time to take that amorphous blob of market information in the world and condense it down into a short, concise piece of information that a farmer can use and take away and go, okay, I've got the idea now. I can now take that, add it to the other information I've got, go and speak to Luke, go and speak to my bank manager, understand, have that plan and that structure in place. So education to ensure that farmers are making those empowered decisions. I think that's a key blocker and something we can all provide.
Yeah, David, well done. Isaac, we're really learning now, aren't we? It is the connections, it's the banking element, it's the education, it's the engagement to help all of us through in these unprecedented times to find the solutions. Isaac?
Yeah, definitely. And spending that time in the office, looking at the information and getting it from where you can. I guess this will be a good time to talk a bit about what commercial offerings are already out there, and looking at risk management. And why isn't it more widespread in the UK? In the US, you get farmers regularly hedging and looking at futures and options, but it's very limited here. So why is that, and what is available, and how can farmers access that?
So who should we go for that? Phil, as Isaac's already intimated, I'm aware in the likes of the States and also even in the likes of South Africa, the likes of the hedging is very, very common. Phil, with yourself, with your farming hat on, and also with your book buying group hat on, is this something that you can see is going to be a bit of a new dawn within UK agriculture, or will we shun it? Will we push it away? What do you think, Phil?
I think we've wanted it for ages. I mean, back when I joined the business before 2000, and we were talking about wanting being able to future sell our milk and all sorts. And then there needs to be a demand to drive the product for banks or for milk buyers or grain buyers or whoever to start to provide the product. But then there needs to be quite a significant shift in confidence that they're not providing that product because they know something that we don't know. Therefore, they're trying to buy it cheaper and get us to commit to selling something early. And I think that's been where we've been stuck. Is that we've gone through this period of sort of saying, well, we need to be able to lock into futures, but then not having the confidence that are those futures good? Are those futures in my best interest? And it's where and how you get that information to have that confidence that that's the right one to say. Now, is that AHDB? Is it your bank? Is it your consultant? Or who? I mean, that's I think where we probably need more support and need more work.
Phil, thank you. I don't know why I'm actually quite surprised that you're quite positive about actually looking down that route. I suppose in some ways I have to apologise. I just had this view that a lot of UK farmers were very hesitant about it. Let's ask Luke. Luke, are you seeing that a number of UK farmers are looking to go down that route, like Phil?
Obviously, in the arable sector, I suppose we're relatively spoiled in the sense that we have a futures market. I've got a futures screen up here. I can see what's happening around the world and on London futures. So we've got transparency, and we can see what's happening. There is the option to take put and call options, but they're not widely traded, and arguably, why? Well, London itself isn't that widely traded. If you look at the lots that go through London a day, it's a bit embarrassing compared to Paris, and then Chicago is just on another level altogether. I think actually, if you've got a good relationship, so options. If you've got a so you can open up a futures account. You're going to put £10,000 down as a deposit to open up your account, and when you buy and sell grain on there, each 100 tons, your initial margin is £3,360 for each lot, and then you'll get margin calls. I just actually think for an arable farmer, pretty much on whatever scale, that's quite a lot to manage. You'd be better off having a good relationship with a merchant who will facilitate over-the-counter options and let you buy back your contracts if your view changes. You've seen the situation that's happened this year. Some people have phoned me up and said, "Can I cash settle the contract?" And then they've resold it again. And that's probably an easier way for a grower to do it than have their own futures account.
Okay, and do many merchants hold my hand with my naivety, Luke? Are many merchants, are they positive? Will they openly set up an account for farmers, or are they in a bit of a dark world like I am on this subject?
Some are more interested in facilitating what you want to do than others, and so I've talked about relationships. Obviously, you've got to have that relationship with the right person to make that happen. But yeah, when I broker grain, I broker with companies, principals that are willing to facilitate buying and selling.
Okay, Rupert, do you have a view on this, please?
I do have a view, quite a strong view, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
And I'm going to go against what the AHDB are trying to do here, because with respect, they've been pushing future options for decades now, and I learnt about it at agricultural college years ago. And the fact is that this is a very different market, as has been alluded to, in the UK than in the States. The States, the crop is traded 6 or 7 times. Up to 40% of the wheat crop is traded in the UK. So if you want to go and trade, really, it is not a liquid market, the UK. That's the first thing. The second thing is you've got to keep on top of it. And, farmers, to be able to do that, you've got to be looking at it the whole time. I mean, Hell's Bells, on Monday, the market moved up 19 points. And if you'd had a futures there, you'd have had a call margin on you of 1,900 quid on one lot. So, futures, I think, is expensive. Options for the moment are expensive, £25 a tonne. And conversely, the market is working against what it should be doing. So in volatile times like we have for the moment, when it should be, the options market should be there to use to manage that volatility, to mitigate that volatility, it's quite the reverse. It would cost you £25 to take out an option for the moment. That it's expensive. And the second thing I was going to say is, I work in insurance in a regulated world, and by gosh, that world is regulated, it's expensive to do, and I don't think it's easy. I absolutely agree. It's about forming a relationship with your grain trader, and actually, what I think it does is, I think these pooling arrangements that you can do, a short pool, a medium-term pool, or long-term pool, I think is much a better way to go than try to play the market. That's my view. Sorry if I've upset the age.
No, that's fine.
It completely depends on your appetite for risk. I've got some growers I work with absolutely love the risk, and they enjoy the roller coaster of the market. So it just completely depends on your attitude to it in the situation.
Oliver, a key farming business comes to you and says, "We're thinking about trading on the futures. Never done it before. We want to do it ourselves." What would your advice please be, Oliver?
I think it's quite interesting, Max. I've got a few views on why we don't have a mass of products out there. I think if you look, the 2 examples you brought up was America and South Africa, I think.
Yep.
If you look at America, we're very lucky in the UK. We have quite a narrow, our core crop, 80% of our ground is covered by wheat, barley, oilseed rape, peas and beans probably. They're quite sturdy crops. We've had a bit of a hairy spring with rain, but we don't live in this sort of volatile climate. We're quite a passive maritime climate at the minute. We often hear of the Midwest Dust Bowl and total crop failure, and I think that's why those sort of insurance products, whether it's forward selling or whether it's crop insurance, which is another good risk management tool in other parts of the world, is why we don't have them here. If you look at South Africa, an awful lot of the agriculture there is by we would call tenant farmers or share farmers or contract farmers. So if the bank's going into quite a large farming organisation that's on an awful lot of rented ground, it will be a condition of funding the working capital that they take a position on the end crop, and then you're backing backing that sort of management ability to deliver the crop at the end of the day. I've got that obsessed with saying that, Max. I can't remember what your original question was now, mate.
So Mr. or Mrs. Farmer comes to you and says, we want to trade in futures. Mr. Barclays, what would your advice be? Other banks are available. What would your advice be? So it sounds like the McDonald's Archers method in the States is suitable there, but perhaps not suited here because we're a different market. Oliver, would that be right?
I think, yeah, we are a different market, but, you know, I've talked about the character and ability and the management of any farming business. If someone comes to us and says, look, at these input costs, you know, I can produce grain at whatever the figure is, £140 a ton, or probably nearer 220, 230, 240 at the minute a ton, you know, but I can get 300 a ton and I can forward sell, you know, that to us is a great business model. You know, there's an old phrase in stockbroking, I think, which is no one ever went bust taking a profit. You know, if someone comes to us and says, I can make a profit at this, and I've locked it all in, happy days.
Oliver, thank you. David, I've got to ask you the same question. Let's give you that scenario. You've just come out from one of your fantastic presentations at the AHDB marquee at Cereals, and a farmer comes up to you and says, David, need your advice. We want to go trading futures. We want to do it direct. David, what would your advice be?
Well, I think, you know, it comes back to exactly what Oliver was saying there, and also what Luke said previously around having the time and the willingness to do it and the risk appetite to do it. If they're willing to take on that risk and they want to invest their time in managing it properly, and they understand, they know the process, they know the risks involved, then it is a way that they can manage risk. If they're doing it on a whim because they think the thing they should do and it might work and there's all these ums and ahs over it, I would say stay the hell away. You know, it entirely depends on your risk appetite if you're willing to spend the time to do it. And I should say, like, you know, when Rupert said about options, I think you might have, you know, talked yourself out of your own argument there, Rupert, because you said options are expensive at 25 quid, but then the market moved 19 quid on Monday. So I think that proves that options are cheap. If the market moves 19 quid and then another 19 quid, you've paid your option off and made a profit on it. So I think the proof that the market is that volatile proves that options actually are the better way. You don't have that underlying, you don't have that call margin coming into it where you're having to, you know, pay up on a day-to-day basis. You just pay the premium and then you can manage it from there. So I would say, you know, if you're willing to spend the time and invest in it, and it is you as a person, you want to do it and you understand it, it's what drives you, you know, it's what excites you, then yeah, you can open a futures account, but you've got to understand the risks and you've got to take it seriously. If you don't want to do it, but you still want to manage risk, options, in my view, has always been the way. And I used to trade options, so I'm a huge advocate of them. You know, I think at the moment they can be a huge tool for farmers to use, both from a farmer selling side, but also when we're talking about managing input price risk. You know, let's go to the pig sector and the high prices that they're seeing for feed. And, you know, pigs losing more than £50 per head. You know, managing input price risk through options is also a strategy that can be employed as well.
Excellent. Rupert, do you want to just top and tail that one for us?
Well, I think that's what makes a market, doesn't it? But, you know, the market went up 19 on Monday and then it came down £14.50 on Tuesday. I think it's the cost of the option relative to the underlying product has increased, which you would expect it to do at a time of volatility. So that was, you know, it's sort of that margin cost, that option cost has extenuated out when it's most needed. That's the sort of point I'm trying to make.
Rupert, thank you. Isaac, over to you, please.
I've just had a question coming from a dairy farmer in Cheshire on the topic of ferts, and with the news of the Cheshire fertilizer factory closing and subsequent headlines regarding UK food vulnerability, how do you foresee the risk and what the impacts for the industry will be short and long term? So if we can answer that one quickly from a dairy farmer in Cheshire. Who will we go to on that? Luke.
Well, I've got to be careful what I say here. I was forewarned that we're live, so I mustn't be liable. That's fine. But you know, yes, but we only produce a small amount of fertilizer in this country. We're going to import it, so it's a global market. Urea price today didn't seem to move much on the back of the fact that there's no UK fertilizer being produced. whether availability will actually be an issue, but like I said, I think there's quite a few people have committed to buy, and so admittedly it's not on farm, but it's sort of in the order book and going to happen. So yeah, I don't think the impact's going to be great. But
David, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, let's say there's two ways to look at it. Long term, the market can realign and recalibrate, as Luke was saying. We will just move to an import position. But again, then we're just more open to global markets. And we've always been a follower in fertilizer markets anyway, because of the volume that we produce. Realistically, I think it comes back to a point that Oliver was making earlier on. We look at it and we go, okay, that's the information we've got. That's the news we've got. Like you say, it hasn't drastically moved the market. I think to a degree it was expected. It's nothing that's massively shocked and surprised anyone. But then it comes back to that decision of going, okay, if there is a margin there and you have a profit margin based on the current historically very high price of fertilizer, let's say £750 a ton at the moment, and you can make a profit based on the November 23 futures price, what are you going to regret more as a farmer? Are you going to regret that you didn't sell and the market goes down and you make a loss? Or are you going to regret that you did sell, fix a profit margin, and the market goes up and you could have made more profit? And I think the big regret really is making a loss. So I think it comes back to that decision about going, okay, fertilizer prices are high, the input price is high. This is going to impact something. It's not just arable. This is going to impact dairy and other crops as well, because we go to the forage argument of it for 23. This is a long running issue that we're going to see. It isn't just going to suddenly disappear overnight. This is something that's going to be around for at least 18 months, 2 years, you would say, of these high prices. It's about managing that in your business and understanding the impacts of working capital. That's the biggest thing that people have to understand for the next 2 years from it.
Yeah, well done, David. Phil, views on that, please?
Yeah, I mean, I've got quite a long way to go with my career, I hope. Any plants closing in this country worry me, really. I mean, supply. When we had a boat jackknife in the Suez Canal and it ruined everyone's Christmas and whatever else, you realise just how sensitive we are to all the just-in-time deliveries. Everything's on a knife edge, the reason we want to be producing food in this country is because we don't want to be at the behest of other external factors and struggling to get things when we need it. And fertilizer surely is part and parcel of that. I mean, we need to be able to guarantee our output in this country, and losing it's going to be a big issue. I mean, whether it'll affect this and next year's prices, I probably doubt. As with all these things, they've been factored in. It wasn't something that just suddenly happened by surprise. So, but long term, it continues to worry me.
Thank you, Oliver. You're going to be very well wired in with your background, but also the bank. Have you got concerns about the supply nature within UK agriculture? That we don't want any more of these failures, but is that something you and the likes of the banks per se are worried about?
I think it's not good news. I think it's good to hear Luke say the markets haven't blipped too much today with today's news, and as Phil's just said, it wasn't completely unexpected. I think food security moves up the agenda. It would, crikey, go back 2 and a bit years to March 2020, and food security was bang on top of the agenda, wasn't it? So maybe news like this is not good for the industry. We need to secure that fertilizer. We need to be able to produce our food to keep our country moving. So whether the banks are overly concerned in what is truly a global market like the grain market is, probably not massively so, but there is a degree of food security going on here. We need to control and produce our own food and have that within our remit to be able to do that. So this factory shutting is it damages that slightly.
And we've said this a number of times over the last couple of years. We know of this statement internally that the government is really worried about the food security element, that we are but 4 missed meals from anarchy. That's the internal statement that goes around apparently within government when people need a definition of the worst case of a breakdown of food security. Rupert, have you got a view on this, please?
Do I don't. Other than I hope that it's woken politicians up to the fact that we should be self-sufficient. A government has two duties, doesn't it? One is to feed its people, and the other is to defend its people. And we've been very lacking in the former.
Excellent, thank you. Isaac, have you got a view on this? Because you're obviously very well wide in, not only in the UK but also internationally. What do you think?
From where I'm coming from, I think, and there's no greater power, no greater motivation than hunger, which is something in this country, we haven't seen in the past. But I think, and with the rise of food banks and what's happening at the moment, that is happening, and that drives and overrides any other thing that you might feel, also, and how you behave. Once people start to get to that point of real hunger and having to decide, that can change people's attitudes, I think, and farmers in a prime position to help with that. So, and I think this could be the dawn of some where farmers really come to the forefront and can be seen as the heroes.
Max, can I jump in there?
Go.
So, I mean, if we were 25% short of fertilizer production in the world, and it's not being produced in this country, where would we be on the priority list of receiving the available fertilizer that was floating around out there? You can say, oh well, you would just have to bid up for it and pay more money and we get it, but there's so much politics that we know goes on in all these things, and maintaining food security for your country will be a large part of the politics, has just been intimated. But I took my 100-year-old grandmother to my daughter's school last week, or before half term, to talk about World War II and rationing. And she was explaining to them, she still has a ration book, and went through the whole idea of rationing. And we weighed out how much flour, how much butter, how many eggs, whatever each person had for a week. And that class of 10, 11-year-olds, they were utterly dumbstruck at the idea that you could live on what she lived on for that period. And that rationing continued for many, I think at 51 or something it finished. I mean, it went on quite well after the war had done. You kind of think it would just jump straight back, but it didn't. That shortage carried on for a long time. And those young minds suddenly, like having that explained to them, put in front of them in physical terms, what rationing and food shortage, whatever, could look like, was interesting from my point of view. I mean, I was pleased that we were able to take that to the classroom and go through it. But it's closer than we think. It wouldn't take very long to be into a situation where we had to. I mean, energy would be the other thing, where we have to start saying, no, you can't have all that you want.
Phil, well done. I think we would all love to have been there to see your granny doing that that talk. That would be fascinating for all of us. David, you're probably closest to us in the respects of what's going on within government and that circle of power. What's your views on this? Do you think we will, if we do need more assistance from government, do you think it will be forthcoming?
So, I mean, it's very appropriate, and I would say I'm probably on 3 or 4 different meetings a week where we're having this very conversation. And I'd say that the key role that we're playing in this discussion is explaining what is happening and explaining what the reaction is and what the possibilities are. So it's something that I think government are very, very conscious of, and it's also part of the reason why we're here is because of the scenario. People are wanting to ensure and understand what the impact of the current market situation is. So, from a government perspective, in terms of the conversations that I'm having, they're fully aware of the issues. They're fully aware of the potential, the problems that may happen. They know that it is a long-term impact. This isn't something that will just be, being gone by the summer or all over by Christmas. This is something that will continue consistently. So they are listening and they're wanting to learn as well. So I have regular, very productive conversations with DEFRA colleagues and with Treasury colleagues to explain the situation so they understand it to make the best decisions.
Again, I think we all need to applaud the AHDB, and in some ways, David, you and your colleagues are perhaps hiding your light under the proverbial bushel. That's fantastic to know that you're fighting the corner and looking to lobby and government on that basis. Everyone, we're just coming to now that hour has just flown by. Isaac, if it's okay, it'd be great to get the views of all of our experts as to this title. How can we plan at a crisis? And just to go around everyone and just get their views as to what their direct recommendations would be to farmers in the UK. Rupert, if it's okay, if we're just going to come straight to you. So what's your view on this big open statement as to how can we plan in a crisis? Rupert, what would your views be? What would your recommendations be to UK farmers?
I think the first thing is know your skill set and know what you have appetite towards and what you're prepared to change. Because unless you understand, what your limits are, then you can't go to the next step. So it's your human resource in the first place. After that, it's the physical resource that you've got, and then it's identifying the financial resource. But this is a great juncture, isn't it? To reset the clock. We've got BPS that is being eliminated within 3 years. We've got ELMS that is slightly delayed in its in the way that it is being rolled out, and we got volatility. So there's never been greater uncertainty. But on the other hand, we've got a climate where there is a lot of exciting developments coming along, and it's keeping abreast of these changes that are coming and what you can adopt and learn as a result.
Excellent. Rupert, well done. I'm just going to endorse again the AHDB. The more I learn about the AHDB, the more that we can be plugged into them, the more that they can help us through this. Phil, over to you. What's your advice, especially from where you are with the businesses that you're involved in, being your own farming business and your buying group? How can we plan in a crisis? What's your advice to the UK farmer, please?
I mean, as Rupert just said, you have to know it to be able to manage it. I mean, the first thing is to know where you stand. If you're not sure, or if you're worried about it, then the banker are equally interested in making sure you're in a good position, and if they're not directly able to support you in that, they'll be able to help you find people that can support you in that. And then it's really finding people who you can work with to help in that process, whether or not it's something like the Orion Farm Group, buying group, or other buying groups, or grain traders that can offer pools to help support your selling and things like that. The AHDB, I've never been to a meeting that I've regretted going to. However, I've frequently found that I'd struggle to find time to get to all the meetings I want to get to, and I think that's probably the most difficult thing is to force yourself to get off the farm, go away and have that opportunity to look back, because once you do that, you can look back with so much more clarity, but you need that little bit of space and breathing room to be able to really see what is right in front of you. So I think that's the most valuable thing I've always done is time off farm, and that I think would be a priority.
Phil, well, so just quickly, there's a Cranfield report that shows that the better businesses are those where the leaders spend 25% of their time thinking on the business. So not working in the business, thinking on the business. And I'm sure Oliver sees that all the time with successful businesses that he's involved with. But Phil, it's obviously that's so difficult to create that separation when you're living and breathing the farm. Phil, thank you. Luke, over to you. What's your advice to the UK farmer?
I actually just going to echo what Phil said. The things I wrote down were just step back, take a deep breath, and have a bit of thinking time. And I think the other thing that feed into that is just know your numbers. Have your cash flow, and then you'll be in a better position just with a bit of time. And like I say, step back. I mean, I always find it handy to drive out of the county and physically get away from the farm and the area to sometimes have some thinking time.
Luke, fantastic. Thank you. Oliver.
I think just to kind of round up a few things, I think Luke Luke hit as a banker come business consultant would agree, know your numbers. We've talked a lot about forward selling crop. If you've no idea what it's costing you to produce that crop, forward selling is a ridiculous situation to be in. For me, I think it's about, I'm going to use an old phrase, an old adage, Max. It's about circles of concern and circles of influence, right? An individual farm cannot influence the price of fertilizer globally, or grain globally, or fuel, or electric. So that those go in that little circle of concern. What you've then got to do, and it's what a couple of the chaps have mentioned, is, you know, what is actually in your control? You know, well, how much fertilizer you use, how much crop you want to produce. Is it worth knocking back the fertilizer use and selling slightly less crop? You know, it's going back to that character and ability of management. You know, just, we can all fret all we like about grain price, electricity price, fert price. There's very little we can do about it on a global market. Focus on the things you can do, know your numbers, have a cash flow. And for me, speaking as a banker, we've seen a lot of requests in the last 8 months for higher working capital facilities. Talk to your bank, talk to your advisors, and do it early so you can plan ahead. That would be my advice. I
want to bank with Oliver. David, over to you.
Thanks for coming last, Max, because all the good ones have been stolen. So I've got to think of something at the end. Cheers. Oliver literally just, you know, almost word for word said what I was going to say about making 2 lists of things you can control and can't control. So I have to think of something else. But my final point was going to be a piece of advice I often give farmers when I'm talking about any kind of decision-making process that they're making, is a really simple thing of, you just write down the reason why you made that decision to either sell or not sell, to buy or not buy at that point. And then in 3-4 weeks, months time, when the market has changed and you suddenly go, oh, damn, why did I sell and the market's gone up another 20, 30 quid, 40, 50 quid, whatever, you can go back and you can go out. But at that point, I sold because I understood my numbers, as Oliver said. I knew the cost of production. I knew what the market was going to do because I'd spoken to Luke, I'd spoken to my broker, I'd spoken to my merchant, and we decided it was, at that time, the right decision. I knew that I had my profit in there as well. So I'm not going to go to Oliver going, oh, no, I need more money again. And I think that's the key thing, to justify the decisions that are being made so that it isn't anything that creates any extra anxiety. Write down why you make decisions so you can go back and review them and understand them in future.
David, brilliant. Isaac, what we wanted to achieve out of this broadcast was people to go away with 5 things, and we've got more than that. I think we've got triple from that. So I'm definitely going to listen to the podcast and pick through everything and get those key salient points. But actually, none of it's particularly rocket science, but to have our experts tell us what's in front of us and just remind us as to what we need to do to get through this, I think it's going to be hugely beneficial to everyone. Isaac, over to you to wrap up, please.
Brilliant, thank you very much. We always think of kind of, you know, a farmer is not an empty cup, but he's filling of information. The information is there. Things like this just that information and remind people of what they can and do that's right for their situation. So, you know, all that's left for me is to say thank you to everybody. So I've been to Luke, I've seen his wine cellar. I know I struggled to get out of the county, but to everybody, thank you very much. Rupert, Phil, Oliver, Luke, David, and all the strings and fighters I had to pull in. So thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Excellent, everyone. Thank you. That was very insightful. We wish everyone the best for the future, and also a great harvest. And we'll see you at the next AHDB event, whether it be online or in person, like they were for the last couple of days at Cereals. Everyone, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.